I never imagined saving a drowning billionaire would change my life forever. I will never forget the day everything spiraled out of control. The air was thick with tension, and my heart raced as I stood on the crowded beach. People laughed, children shrieked with delight, but all I could feel was an overwhelming fear. I had just finished a long shift at the diner and was ready to call it a day, but curiosity pulled me closer to the water's edge. Suddenly, I spotted something unusual. A splash, frantic and desperate. It was hard to see through the waves, but I could make out a figure tumbling beneath the surf. Panic set in. My glancing around showed that others were simply pointing and gasping, frozen by shock. I took a deep breath and dove in. Each stroke was heavy. The water felt like a lead blanket. As I got closer, I caught a glimpse of his face. His dark hair slick and wild, his eyes wide with terror. A billion-dollar man, and yet, here he was, vulnerable in a way I'd never imagined. My muscles screamed as I pulled him to the surface, his weight almost dragging me down. But I wouldn't let go. I couldn't. Choking back water, I gasped for breath as I finally got him to the shore. The crowd erupted into chaos, shouted orders, and confused cries echoed around us. Someone called for an ambulance, but he was still unconscious, pale and lifeless. My heart pounded, each beat ringing in my ears like a warning bell. I could see the panic in his features fade, and for a moment it felt like time stopped with it. Would I really be the one responsible for this man's life? Then, a flicker of hope. I pressed my hands to his chest, desperate. I didn't think, I just acted. The weight of his life pressed against me, and I felt tears stream down my face. The salty breeze mixed with my despair. I refused to lose this fight. After what felt like eternity, he coughed violently, water splashing from his mouth. Relief and disbelief washed over me like a wave, but when he finally opened his eyes, the expression I saw was not gratitude, no. It was something deeper, more unsettling. Those eyes, so dark, bore into me, as if pulling me into a different world. There was a strange intensity, a hint of danger lurking behind them. In that moment I realized he wasn't just a billionaire. He was a storm, and I was caught in the eye. Before I could digest what just happened, murmurs surged around us, a tidal wave of voices questioning, judging. Who was this man? An observer gasped, Isn't he the one who? I didn't have time to process their words. I was still breathless, not just from the rescue, but from the gravity of what had just unfolded. Just then, as he regained his composure, he grabbed my arm. His grip was firm, a silent demand that pulled me back into his world. You saved me, he said, voice thick with unmasked emotion, but with a flicker of something else beneath the surface. Fear. Curiosity. I couldn't tell. And now I need to know why. My mind spun, my heart raced, and an unsettling chill ran down my spine. Why? What could I possibly say to a man who could buy the world and lose it all in an instant? As I searched for words, doubt crept in. Was I in over my head? Had I just dived into a depth I couldn't fathom? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chaos of the moment faded to silence as I stared into those haunting eyes, unsure of what to say. The weight of his presence hung heavy in the air between us, and I could feel every breath he took. The crowd prattled on, but their voices blurred, becoming a distant hum that I could hardly decipher. What do you mean? I finally managed to whisper, my thoughts racing. Did he want to thank me? Did he want to repay me in some grand way? Or was there something darker looming beneath his fascination with me? I couldn't bear the intensity of his gaze, yet a magnetic pull kept me anchored there. Caught between fear and intrigue, he blinked, the moment stretching as if he was weighing his words as carefully as I weighed my next breath. You shouldn't have jumped in. You put yourself in danger for me. There was something tender, almost vulnerable, in his acknowledgement that melted my fear temporarily. Why would you do that? In that instant I was reminded of the reasons of my upbringing, the way I had been taught that everyone deserved a fighting chance, even the richest among us. I felt the urge to tell him about my life, my struggles, the reasons why I felt compelled to reach out. But I choked on the words. Explaining my life to a stranger who could erase my existence with a snap of his fingers felt daunting. I guess I just knew I had to, I finally replied, the honesty slipping out as naturally as the ocean tide. I couldn't just stand by and watch. He nodded, but the tumult in his expression illuminated a storm brewing beneath the surface. You did something no one else was willing to do. You saved me. I owe you everything. Before I could respond, an unexpected voice cut through our moment. Mr. Calloway. A young woman rushed toward us, her hair sleek and styled, her clothes expensive and fitted. The air around her radiated a put-together grace that sharply contrasted with the chaos. We need to leave now. Calloway's gaze lingered on me, and the connection flickered as she arrived. This woman, poised and urgent, suddenly felt like a barrier between us. Who is this? She asked icily, eyeing me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Nobody, he replied, even as I felt the weight of that word crash down. Just a girl who saved my life. At that moment, the distraction of all my uncertainty vanished. I was just nobody, and I could feel my heart starting to sink. As they turned away, I felt invisible in a world where I had just fought to save a life. But he paused, glancing back with a conflicted frown, as if wanting to shatter that label, to break through the invisible wall that had just been built. Wait, I said, courage flaring up again within me. You can't just walk away like this. You owe me an explanation. If I saved your life, then at least you can tell me what happens now. What do you plan to do with that life? A flicker of surprise crossed his face, and for a heartbeat, I saw a flash of admiration in his dark eyes, but the moment slipped away just as swiftly. He looked at the woman, and she almost imperceptibly shook her head. We really need to go, Mr. Calloway. This is not the place. And then it happened. Just as the crowd began to disperse, I felt a sharp sensation, a thud, and suddenly the air shifted. A heavyset man crashed onto the sand nearby, collapsing just a few feet away. Gasps erupted again from the crowd, and adrenaline surged as I rushed forward, my instincts taking over. Someone call for help. I screamed, pressing my fingers against the man's neck to check for a pulse. Confusion swirled in my mind as I glanced at Calloway, whose uncertainty had turned into something deeper. The split-second realization that he and I shared a moment of duty again fueled a fire in me. In that chaos, something bizarre happened. Calloway glanced at me, the urgency igniting once more. He stepped forward, hands spinning into action. I can help, he asserted, voice steady, simmering with authority. And as we worked side by side, the world around us ceased to exist. For the briefest moment, it felt like a team, two people beneath the surface of a city filled with facades and privilege. But as we managed to revive the man and the sirens wailed in the distance, our brief connection shattered. Just as the paramedics arrived, Calloway turned to me, his eyes now clouded with something indefinable. You're going to regret getting involved, you know, he whispered, and the intensity of his warning sent shivers down my spine. And just like that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving me standing there with my heart still racing and a sense of foreboding clawing at my insides. I had saved a life that day, but my own had just taken a dangerous turn. The echoes of sirens faded into the distance, but the weight of Calloway's warning lingered in the air, thick with unspoken consequences. My heart raced, pumping against my ribs as I tried to process the whirlwind of emotions crashing through me. I had initially experienced a surge of adrenaline, but as the paramedics loaded the revived man into the ambulance, a creeping dread settled over me. My body felt like a taut string about to snap. I stepped away from the crowd, seeking refuge under a nearby palm tree, its fronds swaying gently in the breeze. The reality of my actions hit me like a cold wave. What was I thinking? Leaping into danger for someone I didn't even know. But the moment I saw him struggle, something inside me ignited a primal instinct that transcended reason. But now I was left grappling with my choices, with the uncertainties they brought. There might be repercussions, but deep down I felt a gnawing need to connect with Calloway again, to understand why his life intersected so dramatically with mine. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from my mother, the familiar ping of her concern slipping through even in my turmoil. Just checking in, sweetheart. How was your day? Still working at the cafe? Her usual line belied a probing nature, one that always seemed to find the cracks in my resolve. I took a deep breath, reminded of the life I'd left behind today. Was I abandoning the safety of my simple routine, the cafe, the mundane customers, the solitary hours to engage in something dangerously unpredictable? The thought made me feel dizzy, but the spark of adrenaline still burned, making it impossible to shake. Just as I began to type a reassuring reply, a tall figure appeared in my periphery, a silhouette against the fading sun. My heart stopped for a moment as I recognized him. Calloway stood a few feet away, his expression etched with worry. He avoided my gaze, scanning the area for anyone watching. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a mix of caution and exasperation. "It's not safe." "Neither was jumping into the ocean," I countered, taking a few steps closer, desperate to breach the invisible divide between us once more. "You're right, I don't know you. But I can't shake this feeling that feelings don't matter," he interrupted sharply, his eyes darkening. "You have no idea what kind of danger you've put yourself in." "What, exactly, do you think will happen?" I replied, my pulse quickening with each word. "I saved that man and now I'm facing repercussions? Because of what, a socialite's anger?" His gaze turned stormy. "Isn't just about that. You have no idea who I am or the world you're trying to step into. People like me have enemies. I can't let you get hurt because of my mistakes. Then share them with me. If I'm stepping into a world where I could be in danger, then tell me what I'm up against." A flicker of conflict crossed his face, something vulnerable just beneath the surface. But then he stepped back, a wall of ice descending between us. "You don't know what you're asking," he pressed. "I'm not someone you can just waltz into." Before I could reply, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He glanced down, expression hardening. "I have to go," he said, his words clipped. "Just stay away from me. For your own good." He turned to leave and something snapped inside me. "That's it?" I shouted, feeling the desperation clawing at my throat. "You're just going to walk away? After everything?" He paused, his back still turned to me. "The world isn't as simple as you think. I can't let you be collateral damage in my life. You're just better off forgetting about me." With that, he strode away, losing himself in the shadows as the day surrendered completely to night. I was numb, feelings of abandonment and frustration washing over me like waves crashing on a rocky shore. As I stood there struggling to catch my breath, another series of faint echoes reached my ears. A commotion was stirring near the cafe, the one where I spent countless hours dreaming of a life more than my own. Curiosity and unease pulled me toward the noise, and against all the warnings in my head, I found myself heading back toward familiarity, my heart thrumming with uncertainty. The cafe was empty, save for a few remaining patrons whispering among themselves. I felt the resonance of a conspiracy in their murmurs, a heavy tension thickening the air. I moved closer, only to spot a flash of familiar wealth, a group of well-dressed figures huddled near the entrance, their expressions a kaleidoscope of shock and fury. As I strained to overhear snippets of conversation, a name broke through the chaos, almost like a thunderclap. Calloway. My pulse quickened again. What could they possibly want with him? And where did that leave me? I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I had no idea the ripples of a single act of courage would plunge me headfirst into a tempest I couldn't name. Just as I turned to leave, the door swung open violently. A figure stepped inside, eyes glistening with urgency. It was the last person I expected to see, and my heart plummeted as I recognized the expression of determination on Calloway's face. His presence a storm backlit by the twinkling lights of the cafe. "Where are you?" he said, tension crackling in his voice. "I need your help." Before I could respond, he stepped closer, and with a sudden terrified whisper he added, "They're coming for you." The weight of Calloway's words hung in the air like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. My heart raced, panic and confusion intertwining in a painful dance within my chest. "What do you mean they're coming for me?" I whispered, the tremor in my voice betraying the calm I desperately tried to project. He took a step closer, urgency reflected in his eyes. "You need to trust me. I've made a lot of enemies and you've been caught in the crossfire because of my decisions. They think your connection to me makes you a target." "Why would they care about me?" I asked, my voice shaking as I glanced toward the huddled group outside. A muted frenzy of expressions obscured by the glass of the cafe. My world had spun outward, and I felt lost in its gravitational pull. Calloway's hands gripped the edge of the small table sharply, his jaw clenched. Because they won't stop until they erase anything that ties them to me. And you saved me. In their eyes, you're a liability now. As the murmurs from the entrance picked up, I felt the hairs on my arms stand at attention, a primal instinct screaming for me to flee. Yet my feet remained glued to the ground, rooted in the reality of our conversation, in the undeniable chemistry that crackled between us, binding me closer to the danger. Suddenly, a woman with a severe expression and an elegantly tailored suit stormed through the door, her presence commanding and unnerving. She zeroed in on Calloway, her eyes sharp as knives, slicing through the air with authority. "We have to leave now," she insisted, her tone brooking no argument. "Who is she?" I breathed, apprehensive as Calloway turned to face her. "Vivian, my security advisor," he replied curtly, casting a wary glance at the group outside before returning his focus to me. "Listen, you need to come with us. They've already made a move. We don't have time to waste." The world outside felt distant, yet the challenges hovering just beyond the cafe's threshold pulsated at the back of my mind. "I can't just leave," I protested, my voice breaking. "What about my life? My job? My mother?" Calloway drew closer, the vulnerability of his expression coaxing my fear to the surface. "You think they care? You think they'll let you walk away unscathed? If they lay a finger on you?" "That won't happen," Vivian interjected, her tone stern. "We're not letting anything happen to you. But you need to trust us now before it's too late." Time warped as I stood there, balancing on the precipice between my past and this terrifying yet compelling moment. Calloway's gaze was intense, filled with an urgency that ignited a flicker of determination in me. I took a breath, my throat dry, my mind racing with possibilities and consequences. "I'll come with you," I said finally, the decision solidifying as my heart thudded in my chest. The moment felt monumental, almost surreal. I was stepping into a world I hardly understood, an adventure pulsing with danger on the edges of it all. Before we could leave, another voice echoed from the entrance. "Calloway, you think you can just run? You're only making this worse." A young man, dressed sharply but with an underlying roughness, came into view, one of the figures from the group outside, his demeanor pressed by hostility. Panic shot through my body as I recognized the fierceness of his stance. Without waiting for a signal, Calloway moved to shield me, a protective instinct radiating from him. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low, but I could feel the defiance simmering beneath the surface. "Don't act like a hero, Calloway," the newcomer spat, his eyes darting between us. "You think they won't destroy everything you love to break you? This is the beginning for you. And if you think she's safe, you're wrong." Every syllable felt like a code, a warning of the storm we were stepping into. The words cut through the air, each one a reminder that I was now tangled in something far greater than I could comprehend, that our lives were on a collision course with an invisible threat. Fear intertwined with something deeper. Resolve. I wasn't backing down, not now that I glimpsed the perils ahead. I looked at Calloway, desperate for a sign of reassurance, yet all I saw was a man teetering on the brink of chaos. "Run," he whispered fiercely, urgency threading his words. "Get to the back. Now." But as adrenaline surged, another noise echoed behind me, a loud crash followed by shouts, the shattering of glass like a thunderclap. The cafe trembled as the entrance morphed into chaos, the threat closing in. My heart dropped as I realized there was no way back now. With terror gripping my insides, I met Calloway's gaze one last time, our connection flickering like a flame in an unforgiving wind. As I turned to run toward the back with Vivian, I felt the ground beneath me shift, an uproar that promised to spiral our lives into a chaotic unknown. Just as I disappeared past the kitchen door, a booming voice called out, echoing through the suffocating air, chilling my spine in disbelief. "Get the girl. She's the key." And in that moment, I understood that my choice to jump into danger for a drowning man was only the first ripple of a tidal wave that was about to crash down on us all. The air in the back of the cafe was thick with the scent of spilled coffee and fear. My heart pounded in my chest as I skidded to a halt, my mind racing with the realization of what was transpiring outside. Adrenaline pushed me forward, igniting both my resolve and my panic. I turned to Vivian. her expression a perfect mask of determination. "Is there a way out?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She nodded sharply, moving toward the service exit. "Stick close to me. We're going to need speed and silence." As she pushed the door open, the faint sound of chaos echoed outside, a cacophony of shouts and the clash of hurried footsteps. I felt bile rise in my throat, the weight of uncertainty cascading down with every beat of my heart. We slipped outside, a breath of relief catching in my throat as we entered the narrow alley. But that relief was short-lived. Shadows loomed ahead. The shadows cast by towering buildings felt heavier now, more ominous. "Where is Calloway?" I demanded, knotting my hands into fists. In the midst of my own fear, his safety became my anchor. "He'll follow," Vivian assured me, but a flicker of doubt crossed her face, compounded by the frantic noises still spiraling from inside the cafe. For an instant the two worlds clashed, and my resolve wavered. "Do you really think I'll be safe, Vivian?" My voice cracked under the weight of my own vulnerability. "There's no guarantee for any of us," she replied, urgency threading through her words. "But sticking together is our best chance." Before I could respond, a figure darted out from a shadow, a flash of movement that made my stomach drop. I instinctively stepped back, muscles coiling in anticipation, ready to fight or flee. "Don't shoot!" a voice yelled, emerging from the gloom. It was Calloway, breathless and frantic, his eyes wide with urgency. He appeared whole but rattled, the intensity of his expression slicing through the night like a candle in the dark. "Are you all right?" I stepped toward him, my worries momentarily eclipsed by the relief of seeing him intact. "I'm fine," he replied quickly, but his eyes bore a weight of unspoken fears. "We need to move. They won't stop until they find you." With a decisiveness that mirrored Vivian's, he gripped my wrist and pulled me toward the alley's end. As we reached the bustling street, he glanced over his shoulder, the tension in his posture contagious. "Where to?" I asked, scanning the surroundings filled with unfamiliar faces, some lost in conversation, others unaware of the storm brewing just behind us. Vivian's eyes narrowed as she spotted a black sedan parked awkwardly near the curb. "There. That's our exit. Move." We raced toward the car, my breath sharp and mingled with panic. I could hear footsteps behind us, an ominous reminder that our lives were no longer our own. Once inside, Calloway slammed the door shut, locking it with a swift motion as Vivian slid behind the wheel. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see the shadows from the cafe close in on us, the hostile shouts echoing in my mind. "We need to go dark," Vivian said, her fingers dancing over the dashboard's controls. "The last thing we need is to be tracked." "Calloway, do you have what we discussed?" Calloway nodded, a flicker of something almost like regret flashing in his eyes. He turned to me, the weight of his decisions evident. "I need to explain when we're safe," Vivian interrupted. "You know the rules." The car lurched forward, and I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, the city lights blurring into a stream of colors. Panic fluttered in my chest like a trapped bird, trapped between my longing for normalcy and the reality of danger looming above us. Minutes stretched into hours as we navigated the city's underbelly, each street feeling more foreign than the last. My mind raced with the possibilities, each one darker than the last. Calloway had entered my life like a hurricane, chaotic, destructive, and yet strangely exhilarating. Without my permission, my thoughts drifted to the moment we first met, the way he had looked at me, like drowning man grasping at a lifeline. I had extended my hand without hesitation. What had I roped myself into? Finally, as we reached an unmarked building, Vivian parked the car and we slipped out cautiously. I kept my eyes on Calloway. His silence spoke volumes. He was processing something I could feel yet not articulate. "Are we safe here?" I asked, the uncertainty in my voice earnest. "For now," Vivian replied, leading us toward a door guarded by another stern figure who nodded at her. "But I can't guarantee that safety will last." As we stepped inside, a flicker of light caught my eye, a small tableau of normalcy in an otherwise tumultuous world. A child barely 10 sat scribbling on a piece of paper, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. He looked up, his eyes wide, and a shy smile broke through the tension. "Can I draw you?" he asked, his innocence illuminating the shadows momentarily. In that instant, a small spark of hope ignited deep within me. Just for a moment I allowed myself to feel something other than fear, something akin to warmth. But before I could answer, Vivian's voice cut through like a knife. We need to focus, not get attached. The momentary flicker of hope shattered as the child's gaze turned to mine, confusion pooling in his eyes, and I was reminded of how fragile safety truly was. As I turned away, my heart sank again, a gut-tightening awareness settling in. I realized that with the weight of my decisions and the fear closing in around us, we were all on borrowed time. And then from the shadows came a chilling voice, cold and familiar. You won't be safe anywhere. You're running in circles, Calloway. My breath caught, disbelief flooding my senses. I glanced to where it came from, recognizing the figure that stepped forward, weaving through the light a face I never expected to see again with an unsettling smile. Did you really think you could escape? The voice taunted, underscoring the depth of the storm we had unwittingly summoned. In that moment I knew I was entrenched deeper in this life than I could have ever imagined. The walls of my reality and my emotions were crumbling, threatening to swallow us whole. And in that chaos I couldn't help but wonder if saving a drowning billionaire would turn out to be the worst mistake of my life, or the key to my freedom. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in on me as the chilling voice echoed in the space, sending a shiver down my spine. The familiar face stepped into the light, a figure I had hoped never to see again. Marcus, the man whose betrayal had pierced my trust like a knife. His presence was a dark omen, heralding a return to nightmares I thought I had escaped. Marcus, I breathed, disbelief coating my voice. Reality twisted around me, a knot of fear and anger tightening in my gut. How could he have found us here, in this supposed sanctuary? Calloway's grip on my arm tightened, his expression morphing into one of defiance mixed with urgency. Stay behind me, he ordered, positioning himself between me and Marcus. But there was something else in his eyes, an unspoken fear that gnawed at me. This was more than just a threat. It was personal, and I was trapped in the crosshairs. Do you really think I'd lose track of you, Calloway? Marcus chuckled, his voice dripping with a malicious satisfaction. You should know better than to think you could slip away unscathed. After all, the game has just begun. Vivian moved forward, her figure imposing as she glared at Marcus, her protective instincts flaring to life. This isn't the place for this, she snapped, her voice steady yet edged with caution. We just need to figure out our next move. Your petty games can wait. With a dismissive wave of his hand, Marcus scoffed. You think you can simply run? You think I won't find you again? They always find you when you're scared, Vivian. You know that better than anyone. A silence descended, thick and suffocating. I could feel the blaring pulse in my ears drown out the words exchanged, a tempest brewing inside. I had never wanted to be entangled in Calloway's world, yet the more we confronted our threats, the deeper I felt pulled. Calloway and I were woven together by fear and an inexplicable gravity I could no longer ignore. Just as the tension reached a boiling point, the child who had been quietly drawing caught my eye once more. His innocence was a stark contrast to the war of wills unfolding before us, a reminder of what was at stake. Daring to bridge the gap between danger and safety, I stepped forward, breaking the oppressive quiet. Why don't you just let us go, Marcus? I questioned, my voice steady even as dread curled in my stomach. If this is about power, then why would you chase someone who isn't a threat to you? He stared at me, his brows arching in disbelief, then erupted into laughter. Sweetheart, you really don't understand, do you? You've crossed lines you didn't even know existed. And now? You're part of a much larger problem. And then he was quiet again, turning his hawk-like gaze toward Calloway, his expression shifting dangerously. You don't realize the gravity of your situation, Calloway. She's a liability. A truth that struck me like a blow, reverberating through my entire being. All of this, the danger, the thrill, I had put us all at risk simply by existing in Calloway's orbit. I opened my mouth to protest, to argue my worth, but the words got stuck in my throat, overshadowed by Marcus's intent. Calloway inhaled deeply, his face hardening. I would rather face whatever you have in store than let you touch her. I'll fight for her, Marcus. The resolve in his voice pulled at my heart, warmth spilling into my chest amidst the chill of impending doom. I hadn't asked for this fight, but here I was, ready to stand alongside him, defiance sparkling in my veins alongside my fear. Before any of us could shift the confrontation back to safety, something inside me cracked open, a rush of adrenaline and companionship trying to mend the fractures forming around us. My gaze latched onto Calloway. He needed to understand that I was ready to face the storm by his side. But just as quickly, the moment unraveled as the door crashed open behind us, a thunderous force that sent us all reeling. A group of men in dark uniforms stormed in, lined with aggression and purpose. The panic was palpable, crackling in the air, and the sounds of chaos seeped through every entry, with only a few vulnerable seconds separating us from all that could unfold. "Don't move. No one gets hurt if you cooperate," their voices thundered, drowning out the renewed fear that twisted in my stomach. This wasn't the sanctuary we had thought it was. Adrenaline surged like wildfire as Calloway swiftly positioned himself in front of me, a protective barrier against the looming threat. My heart raced, everything spiraling back into chaos once more. The stark realization hit me hard. The wall I had built around my emotions was in tatters, and I had no idea which way to turn. Just as quickly as I had dared to dream of something resembling safety, that semblance of hope was swallowed whole, engulfed in the chaos of the life I could never have imagined. As shouts filled the room, and the armed figures advanced toward us, I felt a sense of urgency wash over me, an overwhelming need to act. But I held my breath, every fiber of my being urging me to run, to fight back against the tide pulling us under. "Calloway," I whispered, unable to shake the fear that gripped me. "What do we do?" He glanced back at me, his eyes fierce with determination, but something else flickered there. Fear, perhaps? Or was it a sense of impending loss? Before he could answer, before we could cement our resolve, Marcus slipped past the chaos toward the very door that my heart was screaming to escape through. "You don't have to run far, Calloway. I'll come find you soon," he taunted, a wicked smile on his lips as he disappeared into the dark, leaving another layer of uncertainty hanging in the air. And just like that, I realized we weren't just running for our lives, we were racing against the clock, and whatever came next would threaten to shatter everything we thought we knew. The cacophony of shouts and shuffling boots echoed in my ears, a clamor that transformed into a heartbeat, racing along with my own. The air felt electric, a tempest too vibrant to command. I didn't want to think, I could only react. Marcus was gone, a phantom slipping back into the darkness where he thrived, and all I could see was the threat closing in around us. "Hold on tight." Calloway's voice cut through the chaos, his fierce grasp on my hand a lifeline amid the maelstrom. There was a flicker of something resolute within his eyes, a fire ignited from the depths of fear. I had to trust that he had a plan, even if it was nebulous and risky. My heart pounded as Calloway took a step forward. "We'll break through together," he shouted, but I could see the calculation behind his bravado, weighing our chances against a tide of armed hostility. My mind spun, caught between fighting and fleeing, the two options pushing me in different directions. "Calloway," I called, desperate to anchor him before we leaped into whatever storm awaited us. "We can't fight all of them. There are too many." He held my gaze, a mixture of fervor and something softer, a vulnerability masked beneath the armor of his defiance. "We'll find a way," he promised, each word a thread weaving together the fabric of our desperate hope with unyielding strength. Just then, a commotion erupted as one of the dark-clad men lunged toward us, his grip powerful and unsteady, and instinct took over as we dodged right. I could still feel the disorientation from the room spinning around me, but urgency propelled me forward. The door was a glimmer of freedom, though I hadn't yet embraced it. "Don't let them separate us," I shouted, the words slicing through the chaos. I felt Calloway's fingers interlace with mine, a physical tether amidst the whirlwind threatening to rip us apart. Another man swung his arm toward us, and in a fleeting gaze, I caught the flash of metal as he brandished it. Suddenly Vivian charged forward, her fierce spirit radiating through the suffocating tension. "Get back," she roared, authority vibrating with her voice as she shoved a nearby table in front of the assailants, creating just enough of a barrier for us to retreat. "A chance. Now," she yelled, urgency emboldened in her command. Without hesitation, Calloway propelled us toward the splintered remnants of the exit, shards of hope shimmering in our desperate sprint. I could feel my heart in my throat as we barreled into the hallway, skirting past danger and uncertainty, but no apparent escape awaited us outside. We stumbled into the narrow corridor, its walls closing in, but each step felt important, every stride a declaration that we refused to succumb. Yet, lingering doubts curled in my gut, frightening visions of what could happen if we failed. "Here," Calloway said abruptly, reaching into a room off the corridor. He opened the door and I hesitated for a split second, sensing a hidden danger lingering behind. The inside was dark and filled with shadows, but an urgent pull urged me forward. As we stepped in, I barely caught my breath before a glimmer of hope broke through the shrouded darkness, a ladder leading to a loft above. My heart leapt at the prospect of finding a way out, but shadows also loomed in the corners, and as I glanced back, the jarring realization hit me. We were still hunted. "Climb!" Calloway's insistence reverberated in my mind. I started up the rungs, fingers gripping the splintered wood. The smells of dust and wood mixing with adrenaline as I ascended. I could hear Calloway's footsteps following closely. His determination emboldened me, and together we would reach higher ground, both physically and metaphorically. But as I crested the final step, I was met by an overwhelming sight. An open window revealed the city beyond, a vast vista of lights twinkling in the dusk, yet tainted with the knowledge that danger still lurked behind us. I felt my breath quicken. Freedom was 3 feet away, but the darkness in our wake lingered, threatening everything we had worked for. "Calloway, we need to jump." My voice trembled as I gestured toward the ground below, gravel crunching distant from the trees outside. There was a rush of exhilaration along with a gnawing fear, could we really make it? But as I turned back to Calloway, a wave of panic crashed over me. He was frozen in place, his expression twisted between resolve and dread. "Stay here," he ordered, the anxiety in his voice palpable. "I'll see if the coast is clear." I felt a zealous torrent of fear within me, a primal scream urging to keep him close, but I could only nod, feeling hopelessly tethered to him by threads of uncertainty. I watched as he inched closer to the window, his strong frame silhouetted against the night, and in that moment my heart shattered with the weight of impending loss. Just as he was about to lean out, footsteps thundered closer down the hall, shattering the fragile hope that filled the quiet between us. "Calloway!" I gasped, the panic swirling to a frenzy. "They're coming!" His head snapped back toward me, eyes wide as time slowed. "We don't have a choice." Before I could scream for him to turn back, 2 figures burst into the room behind him, their eyes dark and predatory. It felt like the world itself had inverted, and I was helplessly shouting no, as the chaos collided, merely a whisper on the lips of fate. The moment fractured, splintering beneath the weight of an impending disaster. As I glimpsed the unmistakable glint of a weapon aimed not at me, but at Calloway, the split second of realization gripped me. He wasn't just fighting for us. He was battling his past, and just outside the window, the unknown awaited, forces of nature colliding against an immovable object. Love, fear, and the promise of inevitable choices intertwined in a dance I never wanted to partake in. I could see the darkness encroaching, the path to safety slipping further away, and all I was left with was the breathtaking reality that my next move could forever change the course of everything I cherished. The world felt suspended as I held my breath, waiting to discover who would prevail. The cacophony of violence that erupted sent shivers through my body, a cruel reminder of how quickly everything could shatter. Calloway took a step toward the window, his body poised to leap into the unknown, but my heart screamed for him to reconsider. I was anchored to this moment, my breath caught somewhere between hope and despair as the 2 dark figures now stood threateningly in the doorway. "Get away from him!" I shouted, summoning every ounce of strength. It was a meager defiance, but I felt the warmth of determination pooling in my chest. If I was going to lose him, I would do everything to protect him until the very last moment. Calloway's gaze flickered to me, a cocktail of gratitude and pain written across his features. It was only a fleeting moment, but in that space, I felt the depth of everything unspoken, the secrets he bore, the burdens that clung to his soul like shadows. "Look out!" I yelled just as the first figure lunged forward. In a fluid motion, Calloway sprung away from the window. I watched him move with the precision of instinct, one honed by hardship and strife. He curled his body as he struck back, a wave of ferocity that made me catch my breath, but it was no longer just about survival. It was also about redemption. Before I could process the unfolding violence, another shape lurked behind the first. I realized with a heart-stopping jolt that we weren't pitted against ordinary thugs. They were agents sent to retrieve Calloway, no doubt men trained to fight and dominate. With each punch thrown and step taken, the room transformed into a battleground filled with desperation and raw emotion. And still my desperation thickened. I felt compelled to help, but the instinct for self-preservation kept me frozen. I was a mere spectator, my hands trembling at my sides. Suddenly, Calloway twisted away from a punch, pushing one of the attackers back just enough to whip around to me, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Get to that window. You have to go." His tone was commanding, filled with authority, as if he could will me to safety through sheer force of will alone. "No. I want to leave you," I screamed, agony lacing each syllable. My feet felt cemented to the ground, shackled by the weight of our shared history, the bond that had formed in secret and longing. The thought of abandoning him felt like severing the fragile ties that bound us. Another thrust, another dodge, and I saw Calloway take a hit to the midsection. The air rushed out from his lungs, and in that instant the world narrowed to just us, the weight of everything that had brought us to this moment heavy in the air. "Go," he grunted, determination pulsing in his words. The raw emotion on his face told me everything I needed to know. I had to choose. I could either flee or stand by him and face whatever darkness lay ahead. As the attackers squared off against Calloway, the distance between us felt insurmountable. My heart raced, quantum words half formed in my mind: stay or go, love or fear. But I chose, propelled by something pulsating within me, something so much bigger than me alone. With one last glance, I bolted toward the window. The rush of cool air hit my face, and I could see freedom tantalizingly within reach. Grass stood just below, a haven that might catch me even if I fell, yet beneath it, uncertainty gnawed at my every step. Just as I reached the ledge, the ground beneath me trembled with the force of another blow to Calloway's body. I spun around, unable to abandon him entirely, and with a newfound resolve I cried out, "Hold on! I'm coming back for you!" But chaos erupted behind me as one of the attackers cried out, a strange cry that resonated through the air like an omen. "You're making a mistake. You don't know what you're dealing with." The warning reverberated in my mind like an echo, a reminder that our lives were running parallel to secrets deeper than fear, a hidden truth veiled behind the glamour of wealth and danger. Then I heard it again, the sound of approaching footsteps amplifying my dread. Panic jolted through me. They were closing in, and the window leading to freedom was now just a gaping maw to uncertainty. But in that moment of agony, just before I could leap towards safety, a voice emerged from the shadows. "Wait!" The words caused both the attackers and Calloway to pause momentarily, and I turned, eyes wide, at the figure whose silhouette now flooded the doorway. It was Marcus. His face was a mask of urgency and regret, an unexpected savior bursting forth from the depths of chaos. "We can't do this, Calloway," he yelled, pushing through the threshold like an exiled phantom. "You're not the man they think you are." The revelation hung heavy in the air. It seemed each heartbeat echoed the gravity of past decisions and present truths. And as everything came to a standstill, I stood at the precipice, torn between two lives that could forever divide us. What did he mean? What secrets lingered in Calloway's past that could change everything? As silence fell, the tension thick as fog, I could feel the universe holding its breath, teetering on the cusp of revelation, and with it the realization that everything I thought I knew was about to shatter, bringing forth consequences I could never have imagined. The air in that tiny room thickened, suffocating us under the weight of Marcus's unexpected presence. The moment stretched and time felt lost, almost as if fate had woven an intricate tapestry where every thread suddenly demanded attention. I was still hovering on the edge of decision, unmoored and desperate, as Calloway's wide-eyed disbelief mirrored my own confusion. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Calloway's voice quivered, tinged with fear and disbelief. The fight seemed to drain from him in that instant, replaced by a vulnerability I had never witnessed before. "Trying to save you from a fate you cannot escape." Marcus stepped further into the room, his usual bravado stripped away to reveal an urgency that softened the harsh expanse of his character. "You don't have to go through with this. You can still turn back." The thugs, now momentarily halted by the shock of his entrance, exchanged wary glances, their dominance slipping just enough to let hope slip in through the cracks. I clung to that hope, desperate for a sign, a reason to believe that Calloway could indeed step back from the edge of this abyss. "But Calloway began, his resolve wavering, yet even as he spoke, fear wrapped around him, a cloak he couldn't cast aside. "Let me handle it," Marcus shouted, the fervor of his plea echoing through the space as if invoking the very spirit of desperation that united us. They don't own you, Calloway. You can choose. In truth, I hardly understood what was unraveling before me. That fact, the sheer enormity of the choices wrapped around Calloway's life, hit me like a wave crashing against the rocks. But it was the uncorrupted resolve I saw in Marcus that stirred something within me. Perhaps he held the solution we all desperately sought. Before I could fully grasp the complexity, the heavy silence shattered again. Enough talking. The leading enforcer growled, and I felt the dread weave back into the fabric of the moment. Just as my heart began to sink once more, Marcus made a move, lunging towards the thugs with reckless bravery, the kind that sought to protect but felt utterly futile against the odds. With each quick step away from his own sense of danger, he whispered fiercely over his shoulder, "Get Calloway to safety. Now." I shook my head, the impossibility of it all crashing down on my heart like heavy chains. "No, I can't leave either of you. Do it. You're stronger than you know." Calloway's eyes bore through me, commanding yet vulnerable, a mixture that urged me forward while anchoring me to the moment. Just as the chaos threatened to engulf us, a small flicker of warmth blossomed inside me. The memory of the laughter we had shared, the secrets we whispered beneath unguarded skies, the knowledge that we had traversed the darkest paths together, shooting stars streaking across a shared night. Though fear clutched mercilessly at my chest, it was the strength of our bond that quaked against my heart as the enforcers closed in again, their intent masked by the violence in their stares. An unknown determination surged through me. I could release hope from this shroud of despair. "Calloway!" I shouted, plunging into the fray, my voice a lifeline aimed at my anchor. "I'll not leave without you. Fight with me." The threat of violence felt razor-sharp, yet weakness wasn't an option, not when everything hinged on our decisions. An explosion of movement surrounded us, and just as I surged forward, I felt a hand catch my arm. I turned sharply to find Marcus, eyes wild with a madness birthed from a desperate mission. "Are you insane?" he hissed, gripping me tightly, his voice low and fierce, even as the world crumbled around us. "No, I'm not leaving him," I insisted, an adrenaline-infused fire igniting within. "He's not just a commodity. He's a person, Marcus. And he needs to see that." Marcus's resolve flickered for a moment. "You think I don't know that? We need to disconnect the lines they've tied him to. It's all about control. Then let us forge a different path. Together." The thugs advanced once more. One powerful lunge toward Calloway. An instinct merged with purpose within me. I could feel a wild courage flooding my veins. A deep call to act not as a spectator but as a savior. The fleeting moments of kindness from strangers and allies swirled around us, perhaps even a spark of the love we harbored even amidst the chaos. Just as Marcus hurriedly guided me behind him, Calloway leaped forward, emboldened by my presence beside him. This was a dance between darkness and light, and finally, we were pulling together, all three of us a fragile shield against the encroaching waves. But then came a cry from the shadows, a voice dripped in malice unmistakable. "Get him. You don't need to fight with them. You're with me, Calloway." The authority hung in the air like a heavy storm ready to break. That I turned, my heart crashing into despair as another figure emerged from the dim light outside the threshold, stepping forth with power and familiarity. It was Naomi, Calloway's estranged sister. Her eyes blazed, filled with a vehemence that threatened to unravel the fragile unity we just stitched. Everything I had believed about choices and hope threatened to break. "You can stop this. It's your destiny." The final threads of loyalty and affection felt like they were unraveling. I stared at both faces as their paths intertwined, pasts colliding with present chaos, and I realized the true weight of their shared history. A legacy of pain and privilege that would test everything I believed was safe. With her presence, an uneasy tension seeped into the air. What did this twisted family drama mean for Calloway? Would it sink or save him? The unresolved knots of his life felt more tangled than I ever could have imagined, and I stood on the precipice of witnessing it all come undone in an instant. Fates clashed, truths hung in the balance, and I could only brace myself as the tide of revelations rolled in. The chaos that ensued felt like the collapse of a house of cards, everything vulnerable and poised to fall. As I stood there amid the tension, pulse racing, I could feel the weight of everything shifting with every passing moment. Calloway's confusion was palpable. The adrenaline coursing through my veins whispered to me that this confrontation held the potential for everything to fracture irreparably. Naomi's words floated through the air, charged with promises and threats, ambition and despair. You don't understand, Calloway. They've made promises to you. Forged ties that will only tighten around your throat if you try to escape. Each word she spoke was a chain, binding him to a monstrous legacy that already felt heavy on his shoulders. No, he finally said, his voice steady as he found his footing amid the turmoil. I'm done being someone's pawn. I won't be manipulated by anyone anymore. Not even family. His gaze turned fierce, piercing through the blinding layers of confusion and regret that enveloped him. Think of what you stand to lose. Her tone dropped, pleading and unyielding. The shadows around us bristled with energy, a maelstrom of emotions, raw and endless. I've already lost so much, he replied, shaking his head as uncertainty flickered in his deep gaze. That vulnerability struck me, a reminder of the man hiding beneath the layers of fame and secrets. I could see the storm brewing, and yet I felt that I somehow had the power to influence its outcome. Calloway, I said softly, taking a step forward, merging our worlds again. Whatever they've made you believe about your destiny, doesn't define you. The story we write is still ours to hold. We can rewrite it together. My heart raced, desperation turning into something like courage as I leaned into what I truly felt, that the two of us could break free from the chains binding him to his past. Behind me, Marcus glanced between Calloway and Naomi, uncertainty drawing the lines tight around his features. It was a crossroad where three lives converged, and with each decision we could either plunge deeper into darkness or emerge, battered but alive, into something resembling hope. But just as possibility lingered in the air, the enforcers surged forward, their intentions ground in hostility. I could feel the electricity thrum through every fiber of my being, propelling me to action. You're more than just a pawn, Calloway, I shouted, my voice breaking through the chaos. You're a fighter. We are more than what's being forced upon us. With every ounce of determination, I stepped closer, bridging the space between us, the space where fear transformed into fierce resolve. And then it happened, something shifted in his expression, a light igniting amid the storm clouds. Calloway stepped forward, shoulders squared. No more, he declared, the strength in his words igniting encouragement through our entwined spirits. He cast a final glance at Naomi, and I could see the tumult in his heart battling the weight of loyalty. I'm choosing freedom, Calloway said, firing words written through every scar and wound he carried. As that resolution settled in both his heart and mine, the storm outside stood no chance against the force of our unified stand. It shattered against the waves of determination we brought before anyone could counter. Calloway lunged into the fray, a whirlwind of purpose defining the man I knew he could be. Run! He roared at me as he engaged with the enforcers, grappling for control and freedom. I felt flames of courage ignite within me, fueling my desire to back his fearless plunge into chaos. In that moment, everything crystallized. The gravity of his choice snared me, and for an instant, I could see a fragile thread connecting us, rooted in shared anguish yet blossoming into a fidelity forged in the fire of transformation. I might have been handcuffed by fear, but the love I harbored for him held me steady, unyielding against the waves. Yet as I readied to break free, Marcus turned to me, urgency alive in his eyes. You have to go now, he urged, his tension brimming with sincerity. We can't keep this up. And your key to Calloway's safety, get to where we plotted, just behind the alley. Not without him, I shouted defiantly, refusing to allow despair to bleed into victory. But Marcus's grip on my shoulder was iron, not an entrapment, but a guide urging me to escape the clutches of impending danger. Trust me, he'd do the same for you. The urgency in his voice sliced through the chaos, piercing my resolve. My heart surged, the weight of every chaotic moment laid bare against the backdrop of loss. I glanced at Calloway, now tangled in the fray of bodies and shadows. Go! Marcus yelled again, his persistence a low growl against the cacophony. Believe in him. His words clenched around me, tracking the remnants of fear within me. Yet there remained a flicker, a bond between Calloway and me that demanded an answer to the question that loomed over us. Could I trust him? I took in a breath, feeling power surge through me, swallowing down the dread that clawed at my insides. I understood now, freedom would come from breaking ties, not binding them tighter. If all of us were to survive this, and if Calloway was to truly heal, then I had to help him find a way beyond what shackled him. I believe in him, I whispered fiercely, conviction thrumming beneath each word. As I turned to run, embracing the instinct ignited behind every vulnerable choice I had made until now, I tasted freedom, a bittersweet breath fueling my flight. Everything around me twisted in a blur as I dashed toward safety. Time became a cruel plaything, the distance echoing my steps, weighty with decisions made as I cut through the shadows threatening to envelop us all. I raced down the alley, heat igniting my breath, not daring to look back, not knowing if I would see Calloway once more. But then I heard it, a scream that cut through the air, a shriek filled with despair. My heart froze in my chest, each beat a painful reminder that reverberated through my core. I could feel the pulse of silence as fear cascaded through my thoughts, clenching my stomach into knots as I leaned back into the dark. I had chosen to believe in someone who willingly risked it all for love, and at what cost? The shadows housed no answers, no endings I could predict, but somewhere deep within, a fierce ember burned, whispering promises of reunion. As I stumbled forward, determination sparked beneath the waves of fear once more, igniting a flame that refused to be doused. I would find him again. Everything hinged on those strands of courage that connected us still, and beneath it all, the knowledge that love, regardless of what lay ahead, could guide our paths through even the deepest darkness. As I turned the corner, nearly collapsing in fatigue, there stood Marcus beside an unmarked door, a glimmer of hope emanating from his presence. Breathing heavily, I pressed against the cold metal, a heart thrumming loudly in my chest. "We'll find him," I promised myself, the quiet ripple of my own resolve mixing into the chorus of his trust. And as we slipped into that darkness behind closed doors, uncertainty swirling yet again like a phantom, I whispered against the echoes of chaos, the final resolution forming in my heart. I would not be a pawn. I would not be a whisper in the night. We would fight through the tempest together, and emerge into the light, because love was worth every battle we had left to face. Together, I whispered softly, echoing the promise of a new beginning. Together, Marcus affirmed, a pact woven through our shared breaths as we prepared to write the next chapter of our journey into the darkness unveiled before us. And in that instant, beneath the shadow of uncertainties, I realized I had come to know the depth of something beautiful, the fierce power of connection that ignited more than fear. It forged a bond stronger and brighter than I had ever dared to dream.